With the financial backing you have, obviously there have been the comparisons to WCW. What do you think about those comparisons?
I mean, I don't want to compare us to any other wrestling company. I mean, we're AEW. We're doing something very different, and
Elite Wrestling Dynamite is on the air, live from the sold-out Capital One Arena in Washington, D.C.
on screen, I think we have a lot of conflict, but backstage, it's a great environment. I mean, there's always creative conflict, but for the most part, you know, the vast majority of the time, we have a great working relationship with each other, and I try to start that from the top. I think there's literally over 100 people out here I have really good relationships with, and that starts with personal relationships. It really clear in Forbes, and I just want to make it clear again. Nick,
it's not his position to make it very fucking clear. There's people who call themselves EVPs that should have.
Being around Tony Khan is infectious, and he's a wrestling fan. I'm a wrestling fan. That's why I'm here today. Tony Khan has a real passion for pro wrestling. He started AEW for the right reasons and changed wrestling history as a result.
Here's the problem with you, boss. You got a position of power in a wrestling company when the only position you should be assuming is behind the guardrail with all of them.
You don't have to be a wrestler to know our business. He was a lifelong fan. He studied it. He studied the business of it and the creative of it, and every idea he's ever presented to me, it's been great.
I carried every ounce of anti-monopoly sentiment on my shoulders. I held every grain of the revolution in my hand, and each and every one of you cheered.
There's no shame. It's me.
You know, contrary to what some may say, based in part on the title of this video, I actually view the story of Tony Khan as more of a tragedy than a comedy. Truth is that negativity draws the dimes here in the YouTube promotion, so I figure I can use conventions like calling people LOLcows or cringe to draw you in. But should you choose to stay, I hope this piece on Tony Khan is able to convey that at one time, he appeared to be a new hope for the wrestling business. So I don't come at this from some misplaced sense of moral superiority, but the fact is that Tony Rafiq Khan's issues are beginning to negatively affect the business we all love. And this unfortunately makes him worthy of the title, Wrestling LOLcow.
You guys got butterflies?
I'm sick to my stomach. A little bit.
A little bit?
Why don't you have any shoes, Paige?
Our story begins in the frigid fall of 2018 when Cody Rhodes and the Young Bucks would answer the Twitter challenge of Dave Meltzer, holding the first non-WCW wrestling event since 1993, draw 10,000 fans, with All In the Sears Center. There was magic in the air, and things in wrestling felt like they were heating up. It's pedestrian now, really, but the idea of a non-WWE event selling out a 10,000-seat arena was largely unthinkable at the time. Now, granted, it happened in 2018, one of the worst ever periods in WWE's entire history as a promotion. Late stage Vince was a killer. The buzz from the fallout was molten hot, and word on the street was that the unprecedented attendance record caught the eye of the billionaire son of Shad, Tony Khan. It was perhaps advantageous that Tony, involved in the operations of the Jacksonville Jaguars, was in close proximity to various broadcast, sports, and media partners, making it so that when he proposed filling the void of the last major secondary wrestling promotion since 2001, it was potentially feasible. The catch of that is that Tony Khan had no experience in the wrestling business. On its face, this really didn't seem to be much of an issue. People like Eric Bischoff and Vince Russo, my close personal friend, proved that you don't have to be a wrestling purist to be successful. You simply need a vision. For Bischoff, it was beating WWF to the punch to do a live program with WCW Nitro. For Russo, it was marrying the wild world of professional wrestling with Jerry Springer, a crash TV formula that sucked the dimes from the pockets of casual fans who maybe never even watched professional wrestling. But with Tony, he kind of just came off like a Redditor.
Versus Matt Sydal, who's a great wrestler. He had another goddamn great match on Friday night. This fucking guy, he fucking did the Friday Night War. He did the first dance. He's done the record Double or Nothing. He did the record All Out in his debut. He was a big part of a record Full Gear, a great match with Eddie Kingston, and he wrestled a bunch of young guys, a bunch of veterans in between there. Will Hobbs, Daniel Garcia, goddammit. And then he showed up, did the biggest program in terms of everything, TV, box ever with MJF, and then he did the goddamn main event here. He's the biggest part of financial success in the history of this company. Let's fucking go!
Any and all interviews with him showed that he just seemed stunted, which, hey, not everybody has to be a wordsmith. You can be a really, really shitty communicator and still be a rather effective money guy. But that's just it. He was a money guy. He was a fan, sure, but most importantly, he was a fan with money. A money mark, as they say.
It began in the summer of 1990 with a mandate from founder and president Herb Abrams to bring professional wrestling back to the glory days.
Money mark is a term used in professional wrestling to describe a wealthy promoter who has delusions of grandeur and wants to make himself one of the boys. There seemed to be this idea that Tony was one of these types, but for the modern age. Tony Khan was an avid fixture on things like wrestling subreddits, the message boards on Brian Alvarez and Dave Meltzer's websites, and according to Conan, Tony once told him he was on EFED boards in his youth, and the show he booked was called Dynamite. This is not to say that being a fan of professional wrestling is at all bad. In fact, there were many potential signings to AEW that laid out Tony's deep-cut knowledge of events in the professional wrestling business as being one of the main reasons they ended up signing with the promotion.
This like my initial talks with Tony, like I said, the first conversation we had, we talked for 2 hours.
Yeah.
And from that initial conversation, I was like, man, like I didn't think it was going to go that well. And it came together pretty quickly after that, you know, just, I think we hit it off and kind of had the same feeling as to where he saw me and what I could do and what I could bring to the table and how I could, like I said, help the roster and help myself and help the show.
And besides, at the creative helm of this new promotion was a committee of people with experience within the business, particularly Cody Rhodes. Cody's father had an extensive history serving as a creative voice in countless promotions like Jim Crockett Promotions, WCW, TNA, and WWE. Cody had grown up in the business, and while he hadn't personally booked a weekly show before, he was the outsized reason why All In's production, promotion, and creative results were such a massive success. And if you watch early AEW, that's exactly the type of creative instinct that was reflected in the product.
Neglected to read in your best-selling book, A Lion's Tale, which you can get on Amazon for $3 or at any flea market. I neglected to read about the upbringing you had that was so hard. You talked about my silver spoon. Gosh, it must have been so difficult being the upper-class son of a famous hockey player. It is almost like we shared the exact same silver spoon, you stupid dick. The dirty secret is you need this generation more than it needs you. And you've surrounded yourself with impressionable youth. This isn't about my dad. This isn't about the dead. It's about the living. It's about my mother. It's about my sister. It's about my wife. It's about the 14 years it took me to go from undesirable to un-goddamn deniable.
Portions of the company's history were filled with bright spots and weekly million viewers, and they absolutely overperformed relative to expectations. They even successfully navigated challenges like lockdowns and showed a resilience unseen from most upstart promotions. Well, with the exception of TNA, I'm amazed they even still exist. I have a theory that I often tell my friends that if we are all going to go down in some kind of nuclear conflict, TNA Wrestling will be the last one standing. They don't die. 2019 to 2021, AEW had begun to establish themselves as a force in the wrestling business. They had dominated WWE's developmental program NXT and forced WWE to focus up after periods of horrible creative.
No, don't do it!
All right.
He's still the champ.
You may not ask me back for another one of these, but how the hell do you get DQ'd in the hell?
Did he get DQ'd or the refs
frickin'
just stopped
cell?
the match? I don't know if he got DQ'd.
I mean, well, they're raising the cell now, so.
But then, and then, yes, it's time to shit on CM Punk once again. No, but seriously, Punk's arrival sort of acted as a gateway and a break in the levee, so to speak. His disagreeable presence exposed structural issues within the promotion, like guys being able to essentially fly blind during matches and promos and shoot on one another.
A little bit of advice, and I suggest you take. The apology must be as loud and as public as the disrespect.
And beyond just Punk, the discipline and restraint formerly shown within their creative began to completely evaporate because there's no time for story. It's time for yummy wummy heckin' debuts! Is that Keith Lee? Oh! Is that is that Aleister Black? Oh! Is that the Undisputed Heckin' Era? Oh! Oh my science, could it be? It is! It's the Hardy Boys! Oh! A chance to parasocially engage and relive my childhood memories! Oh! What am I doing? You see, the cracks, by this point, were beginning to turn into chasms. And if you can believe it, Tony let Cody leave. That's right. The pillar of the promotion spirit was just allowed to bail. He was just allowed to leave. Tony wasn't really interested in growing the promotion. He just likes toys. And he loves spending a lot of money on new ones. Before you knew it, AEW's television was littered with belts, and the ROH brand was randomly superimposed onto AEW TV. All of that discipline, the Rhodes era committees, they were gone. Here we began to see that Tony, without Cody as his TA, was just a Reddit man-child. More interested in toys and yummy wummy dream matches featuring said toys, who, after pitting them against each other, he could awkwardly hug with lust in his eyes. And I don't care about the booking, I just wanna hug my toys. He grew out his hair, stopped cutting his beard, and seemed to also stop sleeping. Now, Megamind had emerged as the main antagonist, the top heel of the promotion, because there wasn't a millie in sight. Tony would attempt to make CM Punk a thing, but his brittle, godless bones gave out on him and put him on the injury reserve. Bizarrely, we also began to get interim champions because Tony Khan was rapidly proving himself to be unable to adapt to changing circumstances, which is the main job of a good wrestling booker, but it's his money, so whatever. There was also bizarre creative, like MJF's work shoot, skewering the entire promotion, calling it Bush League in front of Warner executives, and leaving for 3 months with no real closure.
I don't want to wait till 2024, but you don't listen to me, so allow me to make it a little bit easier for you. Tony, I want you to fire me. Tony, don't tell me down, you piece of shit! Shut your mouth! Look at me, Tony! Look at me! I want you to fire me! You fucking mark! Fire me! Fire me!
After the abject disaster of Brawl Out, in which CM Punk got into a fist fight with the Elite, it became clear that things were out of control. Punk may have been off TV, but the whole promotion was drowned in questions, uncertainty, and frustration. Tony's booking style is one thing, but worse than that, it became apparent that he's a terrible leader. He allowed an off-screen conflict between 4 of his most prominent stars to fester, with all sides just taking passive-aggressive shots at each other. Yet he would refuse to sit these guys down and come up with an angle capitalizing on arguably the biggest gift-wrapped angle that you could possibly ask for as a wrestling promoter. All he could do was act like a feckless, soy-brained millennial leader who, instead of getting ahead of the issue, let this shit metastasize into a massive, gangrenous, cancerous tumor that ate away at the heart and soul of the promotion. So, when CM Punk came back, he was assigned to his containment zone, AEW Collision, and all fucking hell broke loose.
A physical altercation broke out backstage between CM Punk and Jack Perry just prior to the opening match of AEW All In.
Today I had to make one of the toughest decisions of my professional career. Today I terminated Phil Brooks, CM Punk, for cause. This stems from a backstage incident at AEW All In last Sunday. The incident was regrettable, and it endangered people backstage. That includes the production staff, the people who help put the show on every week, innocent people who had nothing to do with it. I've been going to wrestling shows for over 30 years. I've been producing them on this network for nearly 4 years. Never in all that time have I ever felt, until last Sunday, that my security, my safety, my life was in danger at a wrestling show. I don't think anybody should feel that way at work. I don't think the people I work with should feel that way. And I had to make a very difficult choice today. It came at the recommendation of a discipline committee here in AEW, as well as outside legal counsel, who delivered a unanimous recommendation. And I have followed up on that recommendation. I'm sorry to any fans who are upset by this. I'm sorry to anyone who's upset by this. Despite that, we're gonna have a great show tonight on Collision, and we're gonna have a great AEW All Out pay-per-view tomorrow here in Chicago. Last weekend was the greatest weekend in AEW history. This is the greatest week in AEW history. We're going to continue the great momentum here tonight on Collision and tomorrow night on All Out pay-per-view. Let's take a...
The company pretty much smacked its ceiling at high speed. It became clear through that incident alone that the culture of mayhem that AEW had cultivated, well, it had bitten them in the ass. But hey, after the CM Punk debacle, an opportunity presented itself. Despite Punk not making it to the show, All Out was headlined by a tremendous match between my personal friend, Ricky Starks, and the master of cleaning up CM Punk's shit, Bryan Danielson. And hey, they somehow got Edge to come in and draw the house with Christian Cage. I thought for a moment that perhaps with Danielson and Edge's admitted history within booking committees, they maybe could reset the creative direction within All Elite Wrestling. And then...
This week, 2 active decades-long rating streaks from 2 great legends were ended. With all due respect, until this week's head-to-head AEW on TBS versus WWE on USA, Neither John Cena nor Undertaker had ever been on a WWE show with under 1 million total viewers, plus under 400K in the demo.
That is not something that Eric Bischoff would have said under those circumstances. Let's be really freaking clear. Had I had my ass handed to me as decidedly as Tony had his handed to him, the last thing I would have done was to come out and try to spin that ass kicking as any kind of a victory. That is absolutely something I would never have contemplated.
This guy needs to get off Twitter. Listen, I've heard nothing but Tony needs to get off his phone and stop tweeting. And you know who I've heard that from? I have not heard that from fans. I have heard that from people in WWE, but you know who I've heard it the most from? People in AEW. They're like, can somebody get this guy off of his phone? Get him off Twitter.
In the aftermath of, I guess we'll call it Congate, AEW is largely a corpse. The arenas are half empty, and the promotion can't even seem to draw flies to shit. The company is devoid of hype, and Tony Khan's embarrassing public behavior has seemingly led Warner Discovery to weigh this, as they're now, according to reports, far apart on money. And with the news of Impact Wrestling rebranding back to TNA, and Big Tune's Billy Corgan, frontman for the greatest band in the world, as far as I'm concerned, Smashing Pumpkins Chad's Rise Up, It Is Our Time, securing a 2-show deal with the CW network. I'm beginning to believe that the wrestling marketplace is beginning to prepare for a post-AEW timeline. Tony Khan's actions as the head of AEW are especially sad and infuriating because most promotions would kill for a spot on TNT or TBS. I think personally, it's pretty shameless and insulting to the art of pro wrestling to use as much capital as he has access to essentially play GM mode, cultivate and appease a fan base of Redditors, elitists, no pun intended, or as MJF would say, fucking marks, and just generally the worst elements of the modern West, when he should be focused on helping the health of the wrestling economy. You know, for all this talk of Tony being a nice guy, he sure comes off like a complete freak when he engages in arguments with random literal who's, devoid of any kind of influence on Twitter in their DMs. No, yeah, and he also comes off real nice, employing Don Stevens to unfairly copyright strike content creators for criticism of his product. Or, hey, you're definitely just a bastion of kindness when you let 5 people under your employ use your TV show to throw petty shots at each other, and let a megalomaniacal schizo kick the head of the talent relations from your fucking TV tapings. And I think people need to get over this idea that being passive is some kind of virtue. Trust me, I'm from the same state as Tony, right? Been an Illinois boy my whole life. For some reason in the Midwest, for all of its admittedly great values and redeeming qualities, it's also a place where social cohesion, or being nice, is often prioritized over decisive and clear action that will spare people a lot of undue pain, undue suffering, and wasted time. And you know what?
I'm tired of being
nice.
Tell me when I'm telling lies.
What people often fail to realize is that Tony Khan, however kind he can objectively be at times, is harming the wrestling industry. Passivity can indeed be a form of aggression. He's wasted unbelievable amounts of capital, even if it is his own, on buying wrestling friends and gathering them all together in increasingly awkward scenarios that have negatively affected their careers with his incompetence. Why, oh why, does Jon Moxley have to cover Lockport Phil's shift as the world's champion twice? And why does he have to accept being dropped on his head and concussed twice in the same match because his promotion is staffed with fools? Why and how does Daniel Bryan go from main eventing 2 WrestleManias to jerking the curtain with Daniel Garcia to half 1 million viewers? And how is it that Christian Cage, objectively doing the best work of his whole fucking career, in spite of the shitty promotion that he's in, not making a dent? Tony Khan and his stink. That's how. He's rendered the promotion a complete snow globe. He's allowed Megamind a dimeless reign with the Nielsen Ratings Heavyweight Championship, and he's ruthlessly refusing to put Dynamite over. AEW has now reached the point where it doesn't matter if you're a good wrestler or if you're a good talker. You will not be rewarded if you go there. So honestly, who can blame Adam Cole for sitting at home on Twitch instead of working as hard as he did in NXT? Who can blame Keith Lee for appearing like a 478-year-old Elder Scrolls NPC? There's no incentive, and Tony has fostered a culture of mediocrity, and he deserves to be blamed for that. And I can't believe I'm even saying this, but who can blame CM Punk for wanting to choke this fucker? Ah! In all seriousness, this is why Tony Khan unfortunately earns the title of Wrestling LOLcow. Before I go, I'd like to just say thank you for 100 subscribers. I know that's really nothing impressive, but the constant feedback I get, both the positive comments and the constructively negative comments, well, they're much appreciated. The channel's Halloween special, the CM Punk video, and my iDubbbz essay, well, they've gotten almost 2,000 views each, which I want to thank you all for that. It feels kind of nice that 5,000 of you cultural gigachads stopped and thought, you know what? Kind of want to know what's going through this retard's mind. I appreciate it. I appreciate you, genuinely. And to you 100 members of the Kino crew, I see you, and I thank you. Thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing, and until next time, keep it Kino.
If we're going to talk about cowardice and weak-willed men, I don't think we should just talk about Tony Khan. I think we should address the elephant in the room of what Admin Chuck has been doing to me. You see, everybody knows now that Wrestle Kino Live was my idea. All the show outlines, me. All the clips, I did it. And Admin Chuck takes all the glory as the star of the show, the host, the creator of Wrestle Kino. Well, it's not true. And you know what? Admin Chuck is sending his lawyers after me, saying I've slandered his name and I'm making terroristic threats. Well, guess what, Admin Chuck? Lawyers aren't going to matter because they're not going to be able to touch me when I'm waiting for you when you come home. You're not going to escape the wrath of powerful Pete Hardcastle. You're not going to escape the buzzsaw. And Charlie, tell me to leave you alone one more time. Tell me to leave you alone one more time. Because I ain't leaving Admin Chuck. I ain't leaving Admin Chuck. I'm not going to stand for this. No, I'm not going to stand for this.